Greetings, gumshoes, and welcome to another episode of Silver Screen Sleuths, the alliterative show that I totally shot myself in the foot by naming it this. This is going to be a lovely episode because we have one of my favorite people to talk to for podcasting, guesting with me today, Cayce Osborne. How the hell are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's summer in Wisconsin, which is the one of the only tolerable times to live in Wisconsin. So I'm doing very well.
No threat of snow, just beautiful, beautiful weather. And you're not yet at the point where the humidity set in. So it's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. Cayce is the author of an absolutely phenomenal book called I Know What You Did. It came out shortly around the same time as my Viviana Valentine series, and that's kind of how we connected. Cayce, can you give us a little bit of a rundown about your book and some of your history with the text and character we're going to be talking about today?
Absolutely. So my book, I Know What You Did, is sort of, I wouldn't call it an amateur sleuth because she's not even a sleuth. She's thrown into this situation where she's trying to hide a secret. My main character, her name is Petal. Something happened in her past in Madison, Wisconsin. She moved away as soon as she possibly could. And then someone publishes a best-selling novel spilling all of her dirty secrets and uses her real name in this book, even though it's supposed
No.
to be a fictional book. And so she decides the only way to figure out who is behind this author pen name, who is trying to drag her secrets into the light, she's got to go back to Madison, face her fears, face her past, and figure out who and why is all this
Yeah.
coming out after so long. So that's what my book is about. And today we are here to talk about Travis McGee, which is a TV movie, I believe, right? It was made for TV?
Yes.
Yeah. Based on the Travis McGee series by John D. MacDonald. 20 some books from the 60s to the 80s. Beloved main character they tried to adapt many, many times. I think there are 2 adaptations that made it to the screen. This will be
Yeah.
one of them. And he's very much a character that people really love.
Yeah.
I found my way to Travis through my friend Tom, who was a huge Travis fan. He named his cat Travis. And I thought,
Hey.
you must love this guy, these books. But I thought they're guy books. They're gonna be like a sort of a womanizy main character, James Bondy, too
Mhm.
cocky for his own good guy, and it's not really gonna be my thing. So it took me many years to find my way to trying the first one, and I was immediately hooked.
Yeah.
I've made my way through the whole series now, and at some point I'd like to go back and reread because the writing is exquisite. It's very poetic. You can tell that he's got a love for Florida where these books are set and this
Mhm.
character and the turbulent times, the 60s, 70s, 80s, the changing landscapes. He addresses so many societal things that are happening, all the while crafting these beautiful crime stories with lots of heart. And his main character is not like detached like a James Bond type, right? He's really
Yeah.
like invested in what's happening in his state with these people that he loves, and he's really a fantastic character.
I had not realized that this was a TV movie when it got put on my list of like, oh, interesting, like sleuth adaptations or like kind of private investigator movies. It's all over the map for how you could describe Travis McGee. Like he is, he comes into money in sort of odd ways. And so you could kind of put him in amateur detective, but that's how he makes his money by salvaging. He uses the term, he's a human salvager. Like, and he'll, whatever you've lost, he'll find it for you and he keeps 50%, which is like such a great way of looking at it. He could be sort of gentleman sleuthy because he lives on a boat in Florida. It's weird circumstances that he's around, but he also takes his work very seriously. So he can be private detective and he's just kind
Mm-hmm.
of all over the place. And I really loved the fact that he's this amorphous sort of not very focused character in the way that you have your Sam Spades, your Philip Marlowe's, your Nick Charleses, or even, your Poirot's and your Miss Marple. He's just really an unspecific sort of sleuth. And it's very, very compelling. I started reading the book that the movie we watched is based on. And I got I got a couple chapters into it because I started reading it last night before this. And I was just like, I don't want to put this down, but I'm literally falling asleep. So I have to. And I'm going to go back and finish it because you're right. It is an exquisitely written book in a way that I wasn't really expecting for books that come out in the 1960s about dudes in Florida.
Yep. Yep, for sure. I mean, you've got the Florida man stereotype, right? And that's another thing. Like you were saying, he doesn't fit the mold of these classic detectives. He's really sort of a genre buster. You know,
Yeah.
he breaks out of anything you might expect in this genre for a detective who has this long of a series.
Mm-hmm.
And he also breaks out of the sort of Florida stereotype, at least that we think of today. I don't know what the Florida
Exactly.
stereotypes were like back in the 60s when this started, but we certainly have, you know, the prevalent crazy news stories coming out of Florida today.
Yeah,
And
you can definitely see how this series gave us so many of the characters and the book series that we know now that are huge bestsellers. I mean, he's somewhat itinerant. He moves around quite a bit. So there, you know, the version of the book that I picked up had a forward from Lee Child. You could see how Reacher does kind of come out of this sphere of like this unanchored man. And then with the Florida aspect of it too, it is a little bit wild. It is a little bit ridiculous. And so you can see how Carl Hyacin maybe read these and was like, you know, fishermen you know, because he lives in a marina on a houseboat. And you can see how that sort of unknown man sort of concept really goes into a lot of Carl Hyacin's work, whose work I absolutely adore.
yes, yes, this the Travis McGee books don't have that sort of wacky
Yeah.
like that's all Carl, right? That's his style, that's his thing, and he's excellent at it, and it's so much fun to read. And this is fun to read just in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so beloved, Travis is, that the boat slip at the marina that actually exists is now a historical landmark
Oh my
in Florida.
gosh.
They put a plaque up
That's
and everything. Yeah.
That's so cool. I like that so much. There was one other series that came to my mind while I was thinking about this, and I wrote it down, and now I have to look at my chicken scratch handwriting. Obviously, Easy Rollins. There's such an Easy Rollins connection with the not exactly taking payment. Like
Hmm.
one of my favorite things about Easy Rollins is that he always says he does people favors.
Yeah.
And that it's sort of understanding of the power of people owing you do after you put yourself out for them. It's like so involved here. And again, these books are coming out 20, 30 years before any of those books even appear. It's just I didn't realize how foundational this was. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Of
introducing
course. Yeah.
me to him. Now the problem is this movie.
Confetti is going to make sure no one's attacking my house.
Why we edit. And I mean, just like, I love it when your dog shows up because he's so cute. He just runs behind you.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
know.
the
Blur.
cutest.
A fuzzy blur going by.
He's so cute. But
Betty.
he's fun. He also has the greatest name ever. I'm just gonna give him a second. But here's the thing. He's so great.
Betty, do you want to go in the bathroom? No, he does not.
No, I don't want to go in the bathroom.
I don't know what he sees outside.
Like it can be anything from the wind to
Yeah.
squirrel.
All right. All right. Come on. Let me keep going. Hold on a sec.
Okay, sure.
Okay, that's enough. Come on. Thank you. You did your job. Good job. Good boy. No, 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 no. Sorry about this.
I don't care. It's fine. That's what I always tell my dog too. I'm like, that is your job. You've done it sufficiently,
We're
but
done
it
now.
is
We're
your
good.
job.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the movie that we are talking about came out in the early 1980s. I think in 1983. Yes. And stars Sam Elliott.
Yep.
And you're just kind of like, okay, Sam Elliott, fantastic. Totally wrong casting. 100% across the board incorrect. But you know, he's a great actor, so we'll see if we'll pull it off. The movie it's fine, but it's wrong. It's just wrong.
I mean, from the opening frames, I wrote down in my notes, Sam Elliott looks like a New England sea captain.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
in that before you get to sort of the California coast, which is where they ended up filming it, and you see the California-ness of it in the background.
Yes.
I really thought, I was like, "Are they gonna do this, like, in Boston Harbor or something? What is happening?" His little cap that he wears is very New England-y to me. I was like, "This is not right." And I can, forgive, like, cosmetic appearance type
Mhm.
stuff as long as you embody, you know, the spirit.
Yeah.
I did read that he refused to shave his mustache, so they just let him keep it.
Surprised me because, like, he is known for that
Yeah,
mustache. Gosh, Confetti has something to
I
say.
know. He's in rare form today.
He's he's so funny. I was gonna look up, is this before or after Roadhouse? This has to be
I
okay,
think it's
so
right around the same time.
it is right around the same time. Okay, so Roadhouse came out in '89. So
Okay.
it's a yeah, so it's a little bit later, but, like, he's full, like, Sam Elliott Roadhouse kinda look to him whatsoever. And again, like, he's one of my favorite actors. I love him in
Me too.
everything, but you are right that he looks like Quint from Jaws, like,
Yeah,
in the opening scene,
he
and you're just
does.
like, "This is not correct."
No. And then when you sort of figure out, okay, this is in California, and I couldn't figure out for about half the movie, are they trying to pretend this is Florida? Because they don't really, I don't think they ever mention where they are, do they?
They do at some point. Well, I didn't recognize like a lot of the places where they were filming, and I thought they were just going to try to pass off Marina Del Rey and Malibu as
That
Florida.
was my assumption too.
But later on in the movie, they make a mention about sailing down to San Diego.
Okay.
And I was just kind of like, so they're not pretending this is Florida
Right.
any longer. I feel like for the first half
Yeah.
of the script, they were just trying to be like totally different plants, but we're gonna just like whatever it, which totally makes sense. In the 80s, they still filmed here. They don't do that anymore. And we were allowed to pretend like California looked like everywhere. I mean, we had Murder She Wrote, where they were trying to pass off Malibu as Maine, which are entirely different, and the plants are totally wrong, but that's neither here nor there. I always loved it when they would flip the film so the ocean would be on the correct
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
And they don't do that much anymore. This did not have film flipping budget or intentions. They
No.
were just like, no, we're going to do whatever. But they do at some point make a mention of sailing down to San Diego. And I thought to myself, either they're sailing around South America or they finally acknowledged that they can no longer make this look like Miami. Or like Palm Beach, which my Florida understanding is absolutely nil. So I have no idea where those cities are in relation to one another at all whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. That was another reason that I love these so much, is that I have a very much of a soft spot for Florida. My mom spent part of her growing up years there, and
Hmm.
we vacationed there quite a bit growing up. It was the easy place to go. It didn't require a passport. It gave us some warm weather in the winter.
Hmm.
And so I've been to quite a few places in Florida, and love all the varied, environments that you can get from there. And one coast is different from the other coast, which is
Yeah.
really interesting, both in looks and weather and just personality.
Yeah, yeah, that was something I definitely gathered from the book when I started reading it because one of the main characters, Van Harten, he was mentioning that like he was on the West Coast, and I realized, oh, you meant the West Coast of Florida, not the West Coast of the United States, which is like because he was doing shrimping on the West. This does not come into the movie at all. We're
No,
just
yeah.
talking about the book. But he was doing shrimping on the West Coast of Florida and then got, a job skippering for a yacht essentially on the East Coast of Florida again. If you don't know anything about boats, you're going to have a rough time with this because Travis is supposed to live on a houseboat like MacGyver. And then in the movie, they give him an absolutely stunning
Yeah.
sailboat that no human being can actually afford.
Yes, I know. I know, it's like they wanted to give him a bunch of, like, sail stuff to do while,
Yeah.
they were doing their sailing shots.
They were like, let's get Sam's shirt off and see how many times we can show him pulling on ropes. And there's a few where you're just like, I don't mind it, but it's wrong. Like, this is not correct at all.
Yeah. And this is where, like, it really sort of fell apart for me. There are certain things that you wanna see, well,
Mhm.
I'll speak for myself, that I wanted to see and experience going into a Travis McGee movie. You wanna see the boat, it's called The Busted Flush. I believe he won
Mhm.
it in a poker game.
Yep.
You wanna see his pal Meyer, which we do get to see, and I think that part was fine. Like, I have no argument with his sidekick. You wanna see his crazy vehicle, which I think is named Miss Dolly, I can't quite remember, but it's
Mhm.
like an old Rolls Royce that's made into a convertible
Yeah, a
type
pickup
thing, or a
truck.
pickup truck, yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't get to see that.
No.
And the thing that happens in every book is that at some point, the title is in the book.
Gotcha.
Every title has a color, and at some point, Travis will think or say the line that is the title of the book.
Which I find very charming in
I do
books, you know?
too.
It's
I
so cute.
can come off cheesy, I suppose. Let's see. This one is The Empty Copper Sea, is
Yeah.
what is the book they adapted for this movie. And
Yeah.
there was a point where he was sitting on the beach at the end with his lady, and they're
Uh-huh.
talking, and he wants her to come with him, and she's not sure, she's not ready, and he's very philosophical, and I was like, this would be the perfect time for him to stare out at the ocean and say something about the empty copper sea, and he doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it.
Yeah.
I love that ending scene so much because he really is very much like, I need you, like you're my gateway to like this other world that I never thought I would meet, this level of maturity that I never thought I would attain, like I need you to basically like help me un-F my life. And the girl just goes, no. That's so great.
Yep. So here's the thing about Travis, like, in another writer's hands, this because Travis sleeps with a lot of ladies. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah.
And, he takes him out on his boat for a cruise. He's like, you know what you need? You need to come out with me on my boat, and we're gonna go tool around in the Florida waters, and I'll fix you up right. A little
Yeah.
cocktail, a little sail, maybe something else. It'll be great. So there is lots of that in there, and it could easily go like the objectification route, the gross predatory route.
Yeah.
Thing about Travis and the thing about these books is that he always lets the ladies decide,
That's awesome.
and he falls hard a lot of the time, and it's the ladies that leave. It's not
That's
him.
kind of fabulous,
Yeah.
and I feel like I see a lot of that, at least in the Reacher adaptation that they have on Amazon, where he has this, like, it can be frustrating at times where he's just so purely good, but oftentimes with these private detective novels, especially the ones from the mid-century, where they're like, where PTSD is an unspoken undercurrent of literally everything, these guys get really awful. And it is very comforting to at least have a handful of guys who write these sort of like do-gooder novels kind of, well, like, yeah, but he's not that much of a terrible person.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, it was the 60s and the 70s,
Hmm.
It was the time to be, free. So he definitely was writing to his time period for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I really like the way he treats his female characters, as well as a
Yeah.
man can, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, yeah, no, I was surprised at also there's a moment in this. So he gets approached by a fisherman who's like, I got into a boat accident. The guy I was hired by fell overboard and disappeared, presumed dead. I lost my license, my captain's license. My career is in shambles. Like, I can't do anything. Who am I if I'm not a boat captain? And again, very odd sort of thing that, like, if you're not from a place where there are fishermen, you really don't understand quite like the compulsion that a lot of men have about going to sea. And it is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so he's like, fine, I will try to figure out what is happening with this dead slash missing man. And so he sets sail on this gorgeous sailboat that would cost millions of dollars. And with Meyer, who is an economist, not an investor or anything, he's an economist who lives like a couple boats down and who is his buddy. And I just think the conceit of having an economist be your like partner in crime is such a deeply weird but wonderful
Yes.
way of looking at this.
Yeah. I mean, Travis, right? He's a salvage expert. That's what he calls himself. And he often has to get money back or
Mhm.
figure out what scheme is happening. Often they're real estate schemes or inheritance schemes or things like
Mhm.
that. And so having a money guy, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
is a good thing to have around
Yeah.
for him.
It also gives me a lot of harkens back to the Perry Mason novels by Earl Stanley Gardner, where like it's not necessarily violence that's at the heart of something. Like you said, it's scheming. It's paperwork problems.
Yes.
And you normally don't find those to be like sexy, but these are very much paperwork problems that I greatly enjoy as a nerd.
Yeah, and somehow, like, if you were to explain, this guy is buying up a bunch of Florida land and he's trying to build these condos, but the condos don't really exist and he's scheming people. Those are the kind of things that happen. It doesn't sound that exciting or that interesting or that, sort of not noir but like crime fiction that you can really dig into, but
Yeah.
somehow they make it work. These characters, this writer, it works.
And they do a decent job of it in the movie. Because again, like the movie that they have, it was supposed to turn into a pilot for a lot. They wanted to turn it into a television series. And so they kind of did like a movie of the week. It's very high budget with Sam Elliott as Travis. And you're thinking to yourself, like, this is a really splashy way to sort of debut a television series. And, it actually just, like, is not compelling enough
Yeah.
because it is for television and network television. This, I think, was, like, NBC or something. And they have to really hold back on a lot of the language around crime. You have recent Oscar winner Amy Madigan as this, like, lounge singer, and you can tell that, like, they go to bed together because of course, but, there's very and she makes references to drugs and in, like, hard drugs, not just pot, but, like, cocaine, and her ex-boyfriend is in cocaine, and that's part of the shenanigans of the
Right.
dead guy is drug trafficking, but it doesn't get seedy enough
Yeah.
to really, have the same impact as the books probably did.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like there's that scene and where he goes into the bar where Amy Madigan is the lounge singer and her ex-boyfriend's there glaring at him from the bar. And I mean, one thing that they do get right is that, Travis goes into these places. They often happen in bars or restaurants where
Mhm.
he goes in as the interloper and he sits down and he sort of has this moment of sort of assessing the room and feeling it out before he starts to cause trouble.
Yeah.
And so they got that right, I think. Again, like Sam Elliott has sort of this like California slash Western sort of swagger to him that
Mhm.
doesn't really work for Travis, but does work for that type of character.
Yeah.
And I think, there was some moments that I sort of in that scene and that bar that sort of broke for me, broke the tension.
Mhm.
Like the ex-boyfriend starts calling him Magoo instead of
Yeah.
McGee to like, stick it to him a little bit. And then at one point, Amy Madigan, and the next time he goes into the bar, she's like angry singing at the piano, really crazy. And they sort of like stuck some flamingos in the back of the bar. Like maybe it's Florida, like these plastic flamingos in the back of the bar.
Yeah.
So like all those little things are sort of taking me out of this sort of what's supposed to be a really tense moment, setting
Yeah.
up this crime. Yeah.
Yeah, the it does get cheesy, in the way that Miami Vice was also really cheesy, where they're talking about like drug trafficking and
Yeah.
gangs and organized crime, but there's because again it's mainstream television in the
Yeah.
1980s, they just can't really get the heft or the grit to it. And honestly, like HBO didn't really exist yet at this point in time. It was only really starting to cable was only really starting to get its footing, and you realize like this really would have been much better suited. I think most crime television is much better suited for cable because you can actually get into the meat of bad people doing bad things.
Yeah. You don't have to neuter those like moments where it gets real, the life or death situations. Yeah.
Yeah. The comedian John Mulaney, in one of his first bits, he has one of his first specials, he has a very long bit about watching Law and Order SVU. And he's like, the things that they say on that show are absolutely like horrific when you think about it. And but the odd thing is like, again, they only, because it's in a cop procedural,
Mhm.
it doesn't have the same sort of gravity, I think, as a PI or someone who's not an official cop
Sure.
kind of like going after the people who are doing these crimes. Because when it's, Olivia Benson and her badge and stuff like that, or Christopher Maloney, who's like jacked beyond all words, you're just like, oh, this is the authority coming to stop these bad, bad men. So no one else in New York City has to know that these bad, bad men exist. But when you do have the sort of private investigator like Travis McGee handling it, you realize that he can only protect so many people from so many different things. He's just there. He's mercenary. He's in to get in and get out. And it works well ish with Sam Elliott because he
Yeah.
does have that cowboy swagger. He does have that sort of I'm the lawman around here, even if I don't have a badge sort of authority to him. He's so tall
Yeah.
and, and so interesting looking. He's from Modesto.
Mm.
And so I often have joked that like some of the best cowboys on screen come from Northern California. Modesto is a rodeo town up in NorCal.
Okay.
And Timothy Oliphant is from Modesto. Sam Elliott's from Modesto. There are a bunch of other guys where you're like, you stick a 10-gallon hat on that man, and sure, you got yourself a sheriff.
Yeah.
And so I could see how he's correct for the idea
Mhm.
of a lawman
Yeah.
in some capacity. But man, I just keep going back to it's so wrong
Yeah.
for Travis McGee.
Yeah. John D. MacDonald doesn't describe Travis outright. But like
Hmm.
throughout the books you get hints. I think he's supposed to have Irish ancestry. He's
Hmm.
supposed to be fairly tall, but very solid.
Yeah.
And blonde hair and gray eyes that he keeps very militarily cut. And you never
Hmm.
really find out what his background is exactly, but he definitely was in the military at some point. So he's sort of got that like sense of justice, sort of, the American, we are the world's police, right? We're going to make sure
Yeah.
nobody does anything bad. I think that stuck with him from the military. And so I think that's what gives the character sort of his authority. And just
Hmm.
that he can handle himself. I mean, he definitely
Yeah.
gets injured here and there, but if he's in a fist fight, he's going to be winning. That's
Right.
just the kind
Y-
of guy he is. Kind of like
Yeah.
Reacher. It's like, I mean, Reacher's huge, but
I know. He just keeps getting bigger.
yes,
Like,
I know. But, at the same time, it's like this guy has experience. He's been in many fights. This is not his
hmm.
rodeo. And
Yeah.
yeah, he can definitely handle himself and protect whoever he thinks needs protected.
Favorite detail about this. So they're going through their investigation in California. It's so wrong because again, in California in the 1960s is very different from California in the 1980s. In the 60s, you still have a lot of like the Manson free love
Mm.
cult kind of zeitgeist going through things. So I feel like if they had said it in the 1960s about when the books were written, it would have made more sense, at least, that there would be that sense of like unmoored lawlessness. But by 1983, you already have just like it's a corporate town by that point.
Yeah.
You have huge like movie stars. The industry has really, really dug in. And at that point, oil money has already come and gone. And so California had a lot less of that. We always have the air of being like the hippie central, where it's like you always think that there's people up in Laurel Canyon smoking weed and then cutting an album, and that's like the greatest thing that's ever happened. But by the 1980s, that was already mostly gone. It was cocaine and Michael Jackson, not, weed and Janis Joplin. It's a totally different, or
Yeah.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It's a totally different kind of concept to it. And so I really wish they hadn't moved it to California, or at least they tried to fake it for longer that it was Florida. Because,
Yeah.
1980s California, it just doesn't have, it's too glossy by that point.
Yeah, that
And
makes
it's such a
sense.
shame.
It also makes sense then, like, why they were so vague about the place. You
Yeah.
know, if they were gonna do California, they should have leaned in.
Yeah,
Should have
exactly.
tweaked the story to fit the place. And I wonder if because this was supposed to be TV, you know, they didn't wanna set it in the past. They wanted it to be
Yeah.
more modern. I can see how that would have been a harder sell for TV.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially because I do think that the score for this is so bizarre. The
Yeah.
music in the background is super weird, and I just need to look up something up really quickly because it was like the music is so bizarre, and that at times it does get very, like, Jan Hammer from Miami Vice, where, because Miami Vice came out a year after this. And so there is some like very like pulsing electronic music at points, especially when there's fights.
Yeah.
But then at other times it goes into like pure, like sexy sax lounge
Yep.
music. And it really takes you out of the entire
Yeah.
thing.
It's a little all over the place with the tone of the music, and also there are spots of narration in there that they put
Yeah.
in, which I think, you know, was a nod to the book because the book has so much of Travis's inner life, his musings, his opinions, his view on things. And that's where, you know, the real poetry comes in and where you get a sense of place and you understand the character and the stakes. That's where it all comes from. But when you have Sam Elliott reciting it over top of him, like driving around California, it comes off very cheesy and it's
Yeah.
not consistent throughout
No.
the music, nor the narration, nor the tone. Yeah, it's all over the
Yeah.
place.
And I feel like they really just never figured out who they wanted Travis to be in this, again, maybe 2-hour runtime. It's about like an hour and a half. So with commercials, it would be 2 hours. It would be a 2-hour movie block. And they can never figure out who they want him to be throughout the entire thing because at some point, Meyer comes up with a clue that this Swedish woman that they're trying to track down, who never is on screen ever at any point, she's just this mysterious Swedish woman. She left behind a couple of art prints that are worth 10 grand. And you're thinking to yourself, like, that's not a detail that would in any way, shape, or form make any sense to someone who's watching this on their Barca Lounge or on their Lazy Boy in the rec room.
Right.
Or like it narratively, you need a lot more padding around it to explain that the people that she's involved with would know the value of these, modern art prints that she left behind in her apartment. So you're like, none of this makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are different, you know, there's the it almost seems like several storylines stitched together,
Hmm.
without the interconnectivity because, again, the narration is choppy, you know, they've moved locations, and so you don't get all this, you know, all this stuff that underpinned the story in the book, they kind of had to throw out.
Yeah.
So, what they were left with was a mishmash.
It's very mishmashy, especially when you finally get to um her name is Gretel and her brother John. Her brother John is sort of played as someone who has developmental disabilities or at least a learning disability
So,
in the
I think
film.
what it's supposed to be, and again, it's been a while since I read this particular book, but I think what
Mhm.
it's supposed to be is he was a fairly simple guy that developed a terrible drinking problem and then
Uh,
sort of damaged himself. Like he never
gotcha.
came back from this terrible like bender he went on when his friend died,
Gotcha.
which
This
is the
drinking
same guy
binge.
who, you know, the same tying back to the very beginning. I feel like we haven't done a great job of like
Not
explaining
really,
the
no.
plot, but it's
Yeah.
because it's all over the place. But so the dead guy that he lost ties back
Mhm.
to the sea captain in the beginning
Yeah.
who came to Travis to take the case.
Yeah.
That's how we got into all of this.
Exactly. Guy fell overboard. Sea captain's like, you need to find this man, confirmed that he actually died so I can, found that I wasn't at fault so I can actually get my sea captain license back. And so this guy that he's off somewhere to go and find, somewhere in Florida, somewhere in California, somewhere where there's an ocean. And then it turns out that he's just a scam artist who essentially married an much older woman who was financially floating a lot of his scams. He cheated on her left, right, and center. So she's just kind of like, to hell with him. I don't care whatever happened to him, but I know he's dead. And then Travis tracks down John, who was Hub's sort of, or dead
He
guys.
was on the boat that the guy supposedly went off of.
Yes, he was on the boat, but he's also like his assistant / right-hand man. And John's got a hot sister. And so Travis is like, I definitely have to avenge this because your sister's gorgeous.
And that is Sam Elliott's real life wife.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
Yes.
Love it.
I believe he was her 5th husband, I think. And still.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they've been
5th
together
time's the charm.
since like a few years before this movie, I think.
Okay, that's adorable.
Yeah.
That makes me super happy.
And she's the one on the beach at the end who he's like, this is it for me. I want you to come with me and, live on my boat. And she's like, I think I need to be alone for a while. This has been a lot.
She's like, I would rather continue living in a trailer on the beach and doing my laundry in a 55-gallon tub than you fix yourself by being in a relationship with me. That sounds like hell.
I did enjoy the climax on the dune, where the final confrontation happens and you find out what happened, because there's this whole, like, the underlying plot is this guy that supposedly went overboard and died that, ruined the sea captain's life. Is he really dead?
Yes.
Some people are saying, no, he ran off to Mexico. And so they've got to figure, Travis's job now is he dead or is he not dead?
Yeah.
And so then we find out in the final climax on top of the dune and they're tumbling in the sand. And the lady is, has a head wound and flopping over, and it's a whole thing.
Sam Elliott does do good fight scene. He is very compelling in a fight scene, which is, I imagine, one of the reasons why he was cast in this role, where they're like, if you need someone to throw punches, let's get a 6'4" cowboy in there. And you're like, okay, sold. I totally get it. Again, wrong in every single possible way for the book.
I read that this movie did so badly, Don Johnson had wanted to do a movie, a Travis McGee movie, and this killed it because nobody wanted to touch Travis McGee after this because it did so badly.
There was a previous Travis McGee movie that came out a couple years, maybe about a decade earlier in the 1970s. And for some ungodly reason, they decided it should star. I need to see if I can find his name.
Is it Rod Steiger?
Yeah, it was someone. Oh, it was the guy from The Birds, who is he starred opposite Tippi Hedren in The Birds, and you're thinking to yourself, Rod Taylor is who it starred, and you're thinking to yourself, like, probably physically more similar to Travis in the books because he does have sandy hair. He, clean shaven, big kind of, square-shouldered kind of man. And, in everything he was ever in, because again, in the 1960s, everybody was just as tan could be. So you're like, okay, this kind of works. Yeah. And then you were like, no, it was not going to work. Everybody hated the movie that they
did. I watched the opening of that movie because I was curious. Because I didn't know it existed before I went and found this one. And I did it's got a really compelling opening, which is Travis and Meyer are on their little fishing boat bobbing under the bridge, and a lady gets pushed over the edge with cement shoes.
Yikes.
Goes down, and Travis dives down and rescues her, which is a great opening.
That is a great opening. That's a hell of a visual. And I can only imagine it goes down from there. I love the fact that he's in he looks like a beach bum in the opening, where he's kind of like in jean cutoffs, and he's just kind of like his chest is hanging out, and not in a sexy way, and a very much but
very Florida.
Yeah, exactly. It's very the dude from The Big Lebowski. That aspect of it, it works really well. But again, I think switching it to Sam Elliott, who is rugged but elegant.
Yes.
And, from, Florida to California and modern California, not 60s hedonistic California where it's like everybody used to be doing LSD, but now, they're doing cocaine. It's a different kind of drug, it's a different kind of world. I feel bad because you're watching the movie and you're just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like Travis deserves more than fine.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about this series that is so hard to adapt,
Mhm.
because people have been trying to do it successfully for years. I know there was Leonardo DiCaprio wanted to star in it for a long time, was trying to get that
Interesting.
off the ground.
Mhm.
That never happened. I forget who the director was. I want to say it was like Michael Mann or somebody like that.
Well, that would have been great.
Yeah, but I don't know what it is. I don't. It just keeps falling apart. I think Christian Bale was attached at one point.
Yeah.
Like, but in the modern era, they keep trying and trying, and it just,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, falls apart. I don't know why.
'Cause the screenwriter who did the TV movie that we're talking about was Sterling Silliphant, who wrote, like, In the Heat of the Night. We're
Yeah,
talking, like, he wrote The Towering Inferno, which is not a great movie. Same thing with The Poseidon Adventure. Sterling wanted a paycheck, but,
right.
he has an incredible resume, kind of behind him for things like that. Unfortunately, it just didn't work at all. Can you think of anybody who you would like to see kinda do the role now?
It's so hard. Like, he's just, and I think part of it is because he just lives in your head and he doesn't have,
Mhm.
I don't have a strong, like, thought. I have thought a lot about this and I want to give you someone and
Yeah.
I just don't. What about you? Do you have anybody?
I'm not a huge fan of his, but I feel like Ryan Gosling's kinda hit that point of, like, scruffy F it kind
Yeah,
of attitude to it. Again, but he's not that big. Like, he's not a tall dude. He's maybe 5'7", 5'8", like, he's not a huge guy. So I feel like he wouldn't have that physical imposition about him. But I also
yeah,
feel like I know Travis the character, he's ex-army or ex-military in some capacity. There's some references to him having played football. So you expect him to be older at having that resume and at least having enough, notoriety that people know to come to him, which is again not something that
yes,
you build immediately, in your 20s and 30s. So he'd have to
right.
be older.
Yep,
Man, Gosling was the only person I could think of
yeah.
just because of, like, the sandy-haired, sorta, like,
Mhm.
laid-back nature to it.
Who's like a strong silent type? Like, I feel like Gosling has such great, like, line delivery and patter and
Mhm.
humor, and Travis is not that.
Stoic. Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to think of who, like, I picture Tom Hardy is not right, but
Yeah.
visually, I feel like that is where I wanna go.
Mhm.
But we need, like, the quintessentially American version of Tom Hardy, whoever that is.
Yeah. I think there's this real we talk about this all the time of just, like, there really is kind of like a dearth of movie stars right now.
Yeah,
And, I feel some way about it because, obviously we talked about Knives Out a couple weeks ago. And, Daniel Craig is so good in that because, I mean, horrific accent notwithstanding, but like he has that elegance that's required of a gentleman sleuth. He has that natural authority that comes to him. And I struggle with a lot of actors that are younger than that, younger than Daniel Craig, younger than Christian Bale, younger than Leonardo DiCaprio, because I don't think they were really brought up in a place where they were expected to have any kind of authority on screen.
sure.
The authority of a superhero character comes from these special things that they can do, or Thor's hammer, or the shield, or whatever. There's no inherent authority in just them being who they are in the world. And again, you think about characters in that movie that, like, when they're not special, do they have authority? And you have Robert Downey Jr. Again, fantastic. Again, older actor, older than the guys that he's opposite. I love Mark Ruffalo. I would love for Mark Ruffalo to reboot Columbo. Do I think he would be the greatest Columbo of all time? Absolutely. Can I name anybody who has like almost like an East Coast cowboy to him whatsoever?
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
Or
I don't. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's why it's been so hard. I don't know. Just like
Yeah.
matching the right material with the right actor.
Yeah. And I one thing that I do love about a lot of the rebirth of the PI or the sort of noir thing that we've been getting. Again, Ryan Johnson, fantastic at what he does. Shane Black's been doing it for a long time, but they kind of have a tendency to be comedic and glib about it, which again, I love personally. I can't write things that aren't funny. I always try to make people laugh. And I do think that's a tendency in, especially when you're dealing in super dark crime fiction, where you're just like, so many people are getting hurt and murdered. Like it's a very natural, normal sort of reaction to kind of keep it at arm's length with a joke.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think Travis should be funny. He takes things that he does very, very
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. I think the only time humor really enters in is when he's like taunting an opponent
Mhm.
or someone is trying to be a smartass to him, so he's a smartass back.
Yeah,
He's got
yeah,
some good one-liners. The dialogue that is in this Travis McGee movie is very cheesy,
it's
and
goofy.
I think that some of it probably does come from the book because it's that kind of dialogue that you read on the page. Like I'm reading The Big Sleep right now,
Mhm.
and just some of that dialogue is so I don't know what the word is,
Like,
but
stylized.
so stylized, so retro, so of the moment and the story that it
Mhm,
works as you're reading it and knowing it's, taking place so long ago. But when you actually hear a person say it, especially if you're modernizing it as they did this movie a little bit, it doesn't work. And so I wonder if that's part of, if that's part of the adaptation issues too, is that these
yeah,
are books that are meant to be read because they're written. There are books that you read that you fly past the writing, like it doesn't even register the word choice, the sentence structure
mhm,
doesn't even register. You're just flying through the thriller or whatever it is to get to that next twist. And that is propulsive and wonderful. But the beauty of these books is that he did care about the words and the imagery and the structure and what he's trying to say about, the way Florida's environment is being ruined and all of these things
mhm.
that, what's on the page is as important as the story. Those are really hard to adapt.
Yeah, and the class differential between the different people that are talking to him, again, we brought up Meyer multiple times, but he's such an interesting character because he knows the ins and outs of so many of the schemes and the paperwork scams that we were talking about. And then when he's speaking to Van Harder, who's the shrimp boat captain, who's just like his entire pitch to Travis is, I've lost my integrity and I think that's worth $20,000 and I will do anything I can in order to earn that money and pay you what I owe you for finding my integrity. And you're just like, wow, that is an incredibly working class sort of perspective. Just like, I don't care if I'm paying you back till the day I die for $10,000. My integrity has that kind of value to it. And that kind of poetry doesn't come across in the way that it's being presented on screen at all, especially when Travis is sitting in $1 million sailboat.
I can see a world where, like, the right screenwriter with the right director who has a style vision for this and the
Mhm.
right actor, it could work. If they
Yeah.
make it their own, if they take the source and the spirit of it and don't be a slave to the book, but also keep the spirit and as stylized as the book is, make the
Yeah.
movie that in your way. I can see that working. I just
Yeah.
don't know if that's ever going to line up.
No, one of the things I was thinking is, sort of like how I think one of the best things that's happened to Superman, and I know this is gonna probably piss off someone who's listening, is one of the best things that's happened is they cast an American actor to play Superman. And I was not really a huge fan of Henry Cavill because I don't know, it's just I feel like you have to be American to understand Superman, that sort of can you have to you have to at some point in your life go to Kansas and see how flat it is and to know like what that means. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, was someone who was in charge of this Travis McGee movie actually not American? And it turns out that the director is from London and he is an English director. And I'm wondering if that's where some of the actual disconnect comes from, because you and I are going into the details of like, you need to know Florida. You have to know the state that you're portraying, or even know California, and to understand that California beaches are different than Florida beaches. We have entirely different water temperatures. You can't go swimming in California. It's freezing. Like you see people surfing in California, and especially up in like Santa Barbara, and they're always in wetsuits head to toe. You don't go surfing in California in your bikinis or your
Yeah,
just your board shorts. The ocean is really, really cold. And to not have necessarily your finger on the pulse of what it means to have that sort of subculture or that understanding of
for
place,
sure.
that could be why the movie just felt off
Mhm.
a little bit.
Either that or just someone who's a huge fan of the books and
Yeah.
understands the books.
Yeah.
Even if you're not American born, if you have a sensibility about what the books are saying
Yeah.
about this particular part of the country that is unlike any other part of the country. I
Yeah.
think I
It
think
really
that could
is.
work, but,
Yeah.
what person from another country is gonna, feel it
Yeah.
as much,
I
I don't
know.
know.
I know. I will be so curious if they ever announce that there's a new traffic, because in the age of IP, this is gonna happen. The author has been deceased for quite some time. John D. MacDonald died in '86, so shortly after this light atrocity came out. And I'm sure he's got heirs that are like,
Yeah,
you know, give me those Hollywood dollars. So I will not be surprised when they announce that it's happening,
yeah,
but I am so curious to see how it's going to take shape, because unfortunately, charming, but this ain't it.
right. Love Sam
Yeah.
Elliott.
Mhm.
He's just not Travis. He
Nope,
tried his
definitely not.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, if it ever happens, if something else ever makes it to the screen, I will be there. I know that much.
fabulous. Yeah, exactly. Cayce, thank you so much for taking the time to record with me. How can everybody keep in touch with you and your future work?
Sure, CayceOsborne.com is the best way. If you like social media, I do several things. You can find my links on my website. So that's like where the hub. You can find whatever you need there.
Fabulous. I'll throw links in the show notes and a link to watch this on YouTube, because that's the only place to find it. And you get an intro and an outro from a Kiwi with nothing really to say about it, but
Yeah.
bless him for doing the work of getting it up there.
Yeah. At least he put it up so we could have this conversation, which is
Exactly.
more enjoyable than the movie itself.
Yes, it was.